With that being said, I'm super excited to introduce our guest, Dennis Cordell, to the Hub community today. Dennis Cordell was born and raised in Alexandria, Virginia, and graduated from William and Mary in 1997. After returning to Alexandria, Dennis worked for a year with fellow William and Mary alum before attending George Mason for law school, where he graduated in 2001. During his second year of law school, Dennis landed an internship with the newly founded NFL Coaches Association and served as an assistant executive director until 2005. When the NFLCA merged with the NFL Players Association, he then worked as staff counsel for the NFLPA through 2005 and started Coaches Inc. in January 2006. Over the years, Coaches Inc. has grown from focusing exclusively on football coaches, including William & Mary's head football coach, Mike London, to representing over 320 coaches across 15 sports at both the professional and collegiate levels. Dennis now resides in Alexandria with his wife, Sarah Johnson, their daughter, Margot, and their dog, Cookie. They recently welcomed their son, Max, into their family in May. So,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Great. Well, it's exciting to have you here with us today. Let's get right into it and start from the beginning. So today we will be using a interactive platform called Menti. So if everyone could please pull out their phones and scan that QR code up there. All right. So we can move on to our first question, which is, what are the most valuable qualities to have as an entrepreneur? So you can enter in your answers on your phone. You should start seeing the answers pop up as words. Awesome. So like, as you're looking at the responses being popped up, are there any that resonate with you? Is there anything you feel like is missing?
Yeah, the one I don't see up there, which is I think what is the hardest thing, for me is openness to risk. Talking about how I mentioned in my bio that I work for the NFL Coaches Association and Players Association, and when I was at the NFLCA, I could tell that coaches weren't really paying attention to their contracts. I would take arbitrations against NFL teams and would win because the facts were always on our side. But coaches needed help. So I knew there was a reason. But at age 27, 28, I was going to work there for 30 years, become the next executive director of the NFLCA, and my life was set at an early age. Being taken over by the Players Association changed that. And as much as I thought about, hey, I want to do this, I know there's an opportunity here to actually give my 2 weeks notice to my boss saying, I don't want that salary. I don't want healthcare. I don't want pension. I don't want to go to the Super Bowl for free every year. Like that was extremely difficult. And if I didn't have that openness to risk, I wouldn't be sitting here today, but I'm very glad I did.
Right. That's great. So could you also tell us about your time here at William & Mary and what you were involved in?
Yeah, so when I was here, I had a great time at William & Mary. I didn't plan on coming here, but as a kid, I visited numerous times because my father graduated in 1970. He was a history teacher, so he loved coming back. We would go to football games, we'd go to Colonial Williamsburg, and I didn't really want to be like my dad. That just wasn't something I wanted to do, but I applied basically to appease him, and I really wanted to go to University of Richmond, at least that's what I thought. And when I started telling people where I had gotten in, and I mentioned William & Mary, everybody was like, oh, wow, William & Mary. I could tell that was impressive to other people. And then I came down and visited, and I went to St. Stephen's St. Agnes School in Alexandria. The class above me, it was much smaller at the time. I graduated with 63 students from my high school. the class above me was about that same size, but for whatever reason, I think 16 or 17 people from the class above me came to William and Mary. So I came down, I stayed with one of my friends who was here on the wrestling team. And when we went out, it was like going to a high school party for me. And it just felt comfortable, it felt right. And then when it got down to decision-making time, my parents were putting the bill for school, but the difference in price between Richmond private school and in-state tuition for William and Mary was ridiculous. So I said, let's go to William and Mary. But while I was here, super involved in my fraternity. I was president of Highland of Five. We're no longer here on campus, but that was a really big deal to me. I worked at the rec center. I worked officiated games. I was an orientation aide, and then I had campus jobs, which I'll talk about later. But one of those turned into a really important connection in my life. One of the things I did was I would send out the mailers to alumni asking for money. Once you graduate, you'll start receiving those. But my job was to stuff those envelopes, put labels on them, and drive them down to the post office every day. Well, those are some of the things that I did while I was here.
Would you say that experience helped shape your professional career?
It did. Being the president of my fraternity, trying to lead a group of 18 to 21, 22-year-old boys. I didn't say men, notice that, it was boys. Trying to get them to do anything. And our fraternity was a bit of a renovation project as well. The numbers had dwindled a little bit. And we were able to revitalize that. We brought back philanthropy events, which they hadn't done in a while. And I will say that I showed a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit there. We had a washer and dryer in our basement, always breaking down, and it was expensive to fix. So it was also coin operated. So we'd have to call campus, they'd have to fix it. But anyway, I convinced our guys to do a letter campaign to our parents, asking for money to get a free washer and dryer basically paid for by our parents, which we did. And that was a big accomplishment for us.
All right, so we'll be moving on to the next mentee question, which is, what's your measurement of personal success in life? See you in a second. All right, so then we're moving on to the next question after that. What are the top 3 pillars of entrepreneurial thinking that you think are the most important? You can take a look at them on the wall for reference too. Looking at these responses and based on your entrepreneurial journey, which one of these pillars would you want to work on leveraging more and why?
So I look back at what I did when I got started. The one I think I probably did the poorest, but I'm not so sure it didn't help me out, was the failing wisely. So, I got to a point, I mentioned the NFLPA, and my physical office did not change from the NFL Coaches Association to the Players Association. We'd always been in their building. So I'd kind of been an insider on the outside looking in at the way that organization was run. And it was quite different than the NFLCA for me. NFLCA, my boss was somebody who you worked for because you knew he loved you and you wanted to make him proud. Gene Upshaw was the head of the Players Association and did a tremendous job for the players. Gene was somebody who most people in that building worked for Gene out of fear. They didn't want to get fired. They didn't want to make him mad. And that just wasn't my style. So, I think looking at that, the opportunity to discover was, was there, but it was that push that I needed to move. But I'd gotten to a point where I didn't really fail wisely. I quit. I'd had some money saved up from working there for a few years. I had no clients signed. I had talked to a bunch of NFL coaches, asking them if they thought this was a good idea. It was a good idea in my mind. And I like to say that I was young and dumb enough to think that I could do it. Because my competition at the time was one major Hollywood agency that represents players, movie stars, et cetera, et cetera. And then there was the guy who essentially founded the industry, who had been a high school teacher with Mike Holmgren and a part-time real estate agent, a guy named Bob Lamont. And when Mike Holmgren got the 49ers job back in the day, he convinced him to let me negotiate your contract with the 49ers. And Holmgren went on to have success, and a number of coaches who worked under Holmgren went on to become head coaches in the NFL. So those were, but he was extremely established. So those are the two places I was competing against. And looking back, like that was a dumb decision to try to compete with those two people. But I got to the point where I knew I didn't want to be at the Players Association. I'd actually contemplated taking a job outside of sports during that year and realized that no, I put too much into it. I really loved being involved in the game of football and wanted to see how I could make that work. So I don't think I necessarily failed wisely. I kind of went all in. But I will say that necessity, is a great motivator to figuring things out. And I do think it was that, hey, there's no looking back. You got to make this work. Even though in my mind I said, hey, I'll give this 3 years and we'll see how it goes. And I'd still be young enough to maybe try to find another job somewhere else. That was never really an option for me.
So you talked about not looking back and making things work. So how would your definition of success change over time in that case?
So definition of success, when I first started, I came from the NFL. The NFL is a business, a very successful business. And the way that coaches and players view themselves when it comes to contracts is how much is the other guy who's doing the same thing I'm making. And it's really about money. NFL teams treat players, coaches, executives the same as they treat how many footballs are we going to buy? How many sleds are we going to buy? Are we going to stay in this hotel or that hotel? They are line items. They are not anything more than an expense. And so I was coming from an environment that was really all about money. And that was a huge motivator for me. Over time, and this is something that I advise coaches as well, I'm much more focused on what makes somebody happy. And, that's going to be different for everybody. I've realized that, frankly, money is not necessarily chasing money. It's not necessarily going to get it. I found once I stopped kind of making that my main focus, one of the things we talk about around the other agents who I work with is person over position. So, I want to be able to work with and work for people I truly believe in every day. That makes me happy, to really believe that. And what I found is that taking that approach, has worked, and in return, the money has come with that.
All right, so then take us back to the beginning of Coaches Inc. So before your agency was a reality, how did you initially discover the opportunity to represent coaches?
So, and this is something looking back, I realized that I've been doing some entrepreneurial things before I actually started Coaches Inc. And one of that was the way I approached my job at the NFLCA. So at the NFLCA, I helped develop a database. And that 1 year between college and law school, I worked for a wine importer who it was a fraternity brother of mine. His father started bringing wines in from Chile and Argentina. That company since sold to Winebow, and you can probably find Alamos, Malbec, any wine store you see. One of my jobs there was to take a database class and help develop a database to track wine and our deliveries. And so I delivered a database basically that kept track of coaches' salaries, their ages, where they had been for the NFLCA. And I realized that nobody had really shared that information with other coaches. Most coaches at that time had started out in the NFL because I call them they were more PE teachers turned coaches. They did not get into it for the money. The money wasn't there. When I started in 1999, the average assistant in the NFL was making like $144,000. So these guys who were there never got into the job for the money. But over time, the players had gone on strike, gotten free agency, got more and more money. And these guys were starting to become astute that, hey, this is a business. We get fired all the time. There are things that we should look out for. I realized that I went through every coaching contract because I had time to do it. I took arbitrations against NFL teams and, focused on the details of the language in the contract. And I realized that, hey, these coaches aren't paying attention at the outset when they sign a contract. And I believe at that time, probably half the coaches in the NFL didn't even read their contracts. They were so scared that they wouldn't have a job if they asked for anything, that they would get a piece of paper, they were told to sign it, they would sign it and turn it in. And then I would come in on the arbitration end when things didn't go well for the coach and have to fight. And a lot of times coaches were upset about things that had happened, but had they asked for them at the outset, at least they would have known this was an outcome that could exist. So I saw that there wasn't anybody, in my opinion, really focusing on the contract work for NFL coaches. I mentioned there were 2 companies that were already out and doing it. A common complaint I heard was that for the one large agency was my agent really, I feel like, just wants to talk to me because he wants me to help him get his players into our team to get a tryout. So that was an issue. I didn't want any part of that. And then with the others, he also worked with front office people. And at that time, it was a lot of connections of his clients. So I heard from a lot of coaches that my guy doesn't really care about me because he cares about the general manager. He cares about the head coach and not me and the assistant. So, it was noticing that that it wasn't a market that was being served. And seeing a couple coaches start to hire agents. In fact, the last 2 years I was there, I actually negotiated contracts for coaches if they send them to me. I saw there was a chance for success there, but like I said, I didn't have that openness to risk until it got to a point for me in my career where it's like, you know what, I know I can't do this job any longer, and I needed to figure out something else.
So you saw this gap in the market and this chance for success, you said. And so now, what were some key actions you took to make coaches into reality?
So I mentioned that fall, once I decided, I turned down a job offer outside of sports and decided, I want to stick with this. I started letting some people know that, I was thinking about becoming an agent. And I spoke to the large company who was doing it at the time. And I didn't necessarily love the guy I'd be working with. I felt that I could do a better job than him, and our personalities were different. I also started talking to NFL coaches and said, hey, do you guys think this is a good idea? And a lot of them said yes. And you've got a good reputation. You know everybody in the league. You got a shot at this. So those are some of the things that I started. One of the things that I also did was, told friends and family. And one of the people, you don't have my logo, but we'll see it later. I really like our logo. It was my now brother-in-law's little sister, was a college student at James Madison, like graphic design work, and met with her. And I expected, a college kid to come into my house, and she came like she was pitching, Amazon or, some other major company. She had really, really good work. She designed our logo, which, was important to me because, as I said, the 2 people who were leading the industry at the time, one was one man and by himself. The other was a super large agency. They both had success. One was that personal touch from just one person. The other was when somebody called from this other agency, people recognized the name. So I wanted to kind of blend that to create a company that wasn't just Dennis Cordell agent, but also treat our clients as if they were just one person.
So then, speaking of, how would you scale, or how did you scale from a smaller agency to representing over 320 coaches over multiple sports?
Some good luck. Just like a football coach or any coach, it's unpredictable what's going to happen in a game. And whether you're an entrepreneurial spirit to go into sports or some other industry, it's the same thing. And I think being able to last long enough to capitalize on some good luck is really critical. And there are a few moments that stick out for me. 2009, which was year 3 for me, it was really a big year. In 2009, on my way down to try to sign Bobby Wilder, who was the head coach, football coach at the meeting at the time, it was over the summer. I stopped into Paul's Deli with my girlfriend at the time to get lunch because she'd never been to Williamsburg. And it was like 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. There was nobody in there except for Dean Meridian and his wife, Paula. So I had taken his class as a student. I was a government major, but I did take a marketing class. I think I got a B in it. I was not a memorable student by any stretch. And I was like, man, I should go say hi. I knew he wouldn't remember, but Paula was my boss at the alumni house. when I would deliver the mail. So I said, you know what do I have to lose? Let me just go say hi and tell them what I'm doing. So I do that. I go over and explain what I was up to. And he's like, wow, that's really interesting. Would you be interested in coming down to speak at our business school class in the fall? So I said, sure. So I came down and kind of gave a full, class long presentation on Coaches Inc. and what I was doing. He's like, man, I didn't know people were doing this. You really need to meet Tony Shaver. Now, Tony Shaver at the time was the head men's basketball coach here. And we were just football at the time. So he's like, Todd was the academic liaison for the men's basketball team. He's like, you got to meet Tony. He needs an agent. He's a really good coach. So Todd introduced me to Tony. Turns out that Tony was a typical coach of his age. He was probably 57, 58 at the time. Those coaches were very hesitant to hire an agent because they thought it would mess up their relationship with their administration. So the fact that Todd recommended me, also turns out one of his previous jobs was coaching at Episcopal High School in Alexandria. Well, Episcopal St. Stephen's, that's our biggest rival. While he was there, his wife was a teacher at St. Stephen's. So I had Todd endorsing me. I had the background of St. Stephen's, St. Agnes endorsing me. And Tony ended up signing. And we actually did a really good contract with Tony ended up doing extensions. Tony got fired 5 years ago. His last paycheck was in April of this year because of the contract that we did. I'm pretty proud of that. But that opened up the door for us to basketball. And that was crucial for us to get into other sports. And with a coach like Tony, he was well-respected, did a really good job. That gave us credibility in the basketball world. Also in 2009, our head coach here, Coach Mike London, he won the national championship as a head coach at Richmond in 2008. In 2009, he got the UVA head job in that December. And if you guys aren't familiar with the way college works, UVA is what we call now Power 4. They compete at the highest level. Up to that point, we hadn't had a head coach at that high of a level. And when Mike got that deal, it gave us credibility too, that, okay, we know these guys, they do a good job, but are they really able to operate at the highest level? And when Mike got that job, again, it gave us credibility. And from there, it enabled us to sign better clients. We were able to push into basketball. That really helped. And then I will say one more thing that was critical for us. Talking about family and friends. When I became an agent, if you guys do something unique, like become an entrepreneur, you're going to become to your friends, oh, I know this guy or I know this woman who does this thing. And for me as an agent, I was the sports agent that somebody did. So through a William and Mary connection, a really good friend of mine was friends with a guy who I kind of knew in college, but didn't really know him, but they'd become good friends in Richmond living after school. And he worked with a woman whose son wanted to get involved with sports agents. So the son reached out to me one summer. I said, hey, thanks for reaching out. Don't have anything. Reached out the following summer and said, hey, you've really been persistent. I appreciate the way you've handled yourselves. Come intern. Well, he interned and was fantastic. And he happened to have gone to UConn, and his father had gone to Notre Dame. So he was familiar with women's basketball, which honestly, I really wasn't. And as we'd gotten into men's, we realized that, hey, women's coaches are actually making some decent money. So I told him, hey, when you graduate, if you want to take a chance and try to get us involved in women's sports, I'll help you out. And I think you can do it. And now we represent more coaches in the women's side probably than we do in the men's side currently. And that was, again, some really good luck, but it was being able to last long enough in order to be able to take advantage of that.
That's really cool. So taking a step back from those specific experiences, was there any make or break moment or turning point where you felt like everything changed in your entrepreneurial journey?
So I think of two things in this one. So I mentioned the openness to risk, and I cannot stress that enough. It is scary to quit a job that's pretty cushy to do something. In fact, my family, my parents, my grandmother wanted me to get a government job. That was her goal. Both my parents were public school teachers with pensions. That was their goal, was safety. And the NFLPA was a good job, really good job. I just knew I couldn't do it. I quit, and my last day was a Friday. my first business trip for Coaches Inc. was that following Sunday. And I went to the AFCA Coaches Association, the American Football Coaches Association convention in Dallas. And I sent out an email to all the NFL coaches letting them know that, hey, I'm leaving, I'm starting Coaches Inc. You guys want an agent, call me. If you have any friends that are looking for an agent, call me. So I had a few meetings set up down there with some college coaches who were referrals from NFL guys. I had breakfast at like an IHOP and talked to a coach, and I was like, all right, I'm proud of myself. I actually talked to a coach at IHOP. But then I go to the convention hotel, which is the Hilton Anatole in Dallas. I don't know if everybody's ever been there, but it's got this huge escalator in the lobby. It's probably like 3 or 4 stories long. And I walk in and I am petrified. I mean, so scared because I'd never been to this event, but I'd been to events, with lots of coaches before, but I'd always been with my boss. And my boss had coached for 31 years in college and NFL. So when we'd walk in and be, hey, Larry, oh, by the way, meet Dennis, but there was no, hey, Larry anymore. It was just me. And I walk in there absolutely petrified. And the first person I see is a coach. He's coming down the escalator and he starts waving. And there's a coach named Les Steckel. At the time, he was the head of the FCA, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So that's why he was at the convention. But one of the things that we accomplished at the NFLCA was this supplemental retirement plan for coaches. And I was able to negotiate a settlement with the Tampa Bay Bucks for less on his last job so that he qualified for this retirement benefit. So he was very grateful for the work I had done for him as an employee of the Coaches Association. When I saw him and he's like, what are you doing here? And we started talking. I just had this wave of like peace and comfort that came over. And it was like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And no money. I had no clients. I'd spent money to come on this trip. I had zero income coming in from this, but it was that feeling like, you know what? I'm supposed to be doing this. I think the second one that really changed things for the better for Coaches Inc. and really for me personally. So you start out and it becomes your life. Really the only thing you can think about. And you never really want to lose clients, but hey, this is a business. You're going to get fired. And that was a hard thing to accept at first, but it became, reality. But I kept, every time somebody would leave, I wanted to say, well, what could I have done better? What could I have done better? And then came to a point where I was working with this coach who, he was an asshole, just to be, and his last job, he's an NFL coach for the Patriots. His last job was with the Buccaneers. And when he went to the Buccaneers, he was the only assistant coach to get a 3-year contract with this new staff. Well, he gets fired after year 2, even though they had set like the rushing record for Tampa Bay. He was a O-line coach. He did a great job on the field, but he got fired. And if you Googled his name that year, the first page of Google was article after article about how this coach could not get along with other people. He got fired because players hated him, because coaches hate him, because trainers hate him. So he's calling me every day about what jobs are coming open, and it was miserable. And I was working super, super hard for him. And he had unrealistic expectations. So he ends up landing a job, became a head coach in college, which to me was the most amazing thing ever. And one of the things we got in his contract was that he could leave this college job if the NFL came calling. Well, he gets this job. He doesn't know people in college. He doesn't have a lot of friends. I told you what kind of person he was. So he's trying to fill out his staff. And he hires 2 of our assistant coaches as his coordinators. Well, that happens in December. February, I'm at the combine, and one of those coordinators had been in the NFL. He and I are there. I keep bringing up the Bucks, but he got offered by the Bucks to go take a job with them for more money than what he was going to make in college. So I had worked in his contract, the same thing I got in the head coaches, that he could leave without having to pay. So I'm like, oh man, the head coach is not going to like this. So he takes the job with the Bucks, and that Wednesday, I get a letter in the mail from a lawyer from New York saying, so-and-so has fired you. He's not going to pay any more money. And I'd just done a 5-year contract. It was real money that he was threatening not to pay. And during that time of him trying to get a job and getting this job, I came home one night from the office like 11:15, 11:30, and I was living with a girlfriend at the time. My dad was there, and they kind of sat me down. Like my dad had brought me like wheat thins and Starbucks gift cards and some 5-hour energies, whatever. They were both like, "Yo, what's going on with you?" And because I was so stressed trying to please this one coach who was just a pain in my butt. I thought I did an amazing job getting him this contract, and then he still fired me when things didn't go his way. So what that did for me was I realized there's nothing more I could have done. In my mind, I did way above and beyond in helping this coach, and he still fired us. So what that did for me was allow me to be okay with that, to realize that, hey, people are going to fire you because they're going to fire you. You can't beat yourself up if things don't work out, because there's some people you're just never going to please. That also made me focus more on the type of person we work with. You know, we put in a lot of time and effort, get very close with a lot of our clients. You know, I always say that what's most important to me about signing a new client is if they're the type of person, when I see their name pop up on my phone, I'm excited to answer. You know, with that guy, I was like, oh my God, I got to talk to this guy. I have to take a deep breath and do it. But honestly, that ended up being a great teaching point for me, and changed the way I approached life, really. And it also, we worked out a settlement with him that we've now used as kind of a model settlement for anybody else that tries to do the same thing.
So we've talked about how you changed your approach in life and how you brought Coaches Inc. to where it is today. I also remember you mentioned you had some slides you would like to show them.
I do. You can pull them up. Okay, so if we could go to the next one. So people hear about an agent and maybe hear today about a coach's agent, but what exactly do we do for coaches? And honestly, being young and dumb starting, I did not know what to do for coaches. And it's something that I've learned over time. But there's a few things that we do most of the time. And I wanted to make sure that everybody left here today having a better understanding of what actually a coach's agent does. Number one, advise clients on navigating the profession without personal bias. So this is a tough business. You get fired for losing games. No coach ever tries to lose a game. That is not in their DNA. You could not put in the time and effort that it takes to be in this profession to try to lose, but it happens. Coaches in their lives have other people. They have the coaches who they work with. They have their own mentors in the business who maybe gave them their first job and helped raise them. They have their families. We give advice based on what we believe will help them reach their goals in the profession. And that's something that I think is really valuable, and something that we spend probably the majority of our time doing. Under there, have listen and get to know individual goals and motivations. Listening, I am not a therapist, but I do believe that I'm a pretty good listener and have a lot of practical experience in the field. Just this morning on the way down, I get a call from one of our clients in week 0 of this year. Delaware State football made national news, and it wasn't for a good reason. Their bus that was supposed to drive them from Delaware to JFK to get on a plane to go play Hawaii showed up 3 hours late. They ended up missing their flight to Delaware or to Hawaii and had to stay an extra day in JFK. Because it was week 0, nobody really cares that much about Delaware State football. Because it was week 0 and there was 5 or 6 games being played, it was on CNN, it was on ESPN. It became a national story. It did not look good for Delaware State. Well, I get a call this morning, and they've got a road game today. They're taking buses to the game, the same company. And one of the air conditioners on the bus was out. And it's hot today. They couldn't use the bus this morning, so they're going to end up adjusting their plans and having to get a different bus come in. But they're going to do their walkthrough on campus instead of at the visitor site, and having to adjust. There's nothing I can do about that, but the coach needed somebody to vent to, and I listened. I listened and said, "Oh man, I'm sorry you're going through that. That sucks. You shouldn't have to go through that. But remember, you're the leader, and you got to adjust to things. Your team is relying on you." That is something, listening, assisting with that day-to-day issue that faces coaches. That's a really critical thing in what we do. And we also help coaches evaluate job opportunities. Some coaches want to be head coaches. Some coaches want to make the most money they can. Some coaches want to be an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. I keep referencing football, but every coach has a different motivation for what they do. And we want to know what those are so that we can help best advise them in reaching those goals. Doesn't mean that we're always going to be able to help them get there, but we want to be able to do that. Job search assistance. So in coaching, it's not like you go to a job board, post a resume, and get a call back. When a job is open in coaching, it's almost 75 to 80% of those jobs are from referrals. So knowing about what jobs are coming open is really critical in helping coaches get involved. So we try to get to know that information as best as we can. We talk to our clients, we talk to media people, we talk to search firms, we talk to athletic directors, and we try to predict what might happen. But we want to know that, hey, if there's a job that makes sense, we have a client who's a realistic candidate for that job, that he knows about it so that we can create a plan of attack for that job. We try to advocate for our coaches when it comes to job, whether that's a head coach, whether that's an athletic director or search firm. We try to advocate to say why our coach should get a chance. And then again, not rocket science, tracking down cell phone numbers is something that we do quite a bit when it comes to the job cycle. So I mentioned that people need referrals. So a lot of times a coach will know someone who knows somebody that could help, but that person might not have a cell phone for that guy. So we try to track that down. That becomes really important. Professional development is another thing we do. We do a summer Zoom series with some industry insiders. We have media, search firms, ADs, other coaches talking about their experiences, so guys can get a chance to learn about that. We do interview prep, so we try to help our coaches become better at the interview process. We host parties at big events. So at the AFCA, we'll host a party. At the Combine, we'll host a party. Those are things that are a way for our coaches to get to know each other, as well as invite people from the industry to get to know them. And we try to set up personal introductions as well for a lot of our coaches. And then the thing that I think coming out of the Coaches Players Association to start Coaches Inc., I was like, man, I'm going to negotiate contracts. And I was gone to law school, was really proud of the work I had done winning arbitrations at the NFLCA. That is the smallest amount of my time is spent negotiating contracts. It is much more than doing that. When it comes to contracts for coaches, we have two goals. One is to get the most amount of guaranteed money for the coach, so that if the coach's team loses, that coach is still getting paid. The second is to make the buyout, and a buyout means the penalty a coach would have to pay to break his contract early or her contract early, to make that as least prohibitive as possible. Now, we're okay with buyouts that prevent a coach from going from Coach Blackstock here, assistant at William & Mary. We're okay if a buyout in his contract would prevent him from going to University of Richmond or Towson. Well, we don't want a buyout that would prevent him from taking a job at Virginia or Virginia Tech, a job that would pay him much more. So we look at those types of things when it comes to what a coach would have to pay back. Those are the two biggest things that we try to negotiate. How do we get clients? So that's another thing that I didn't really understand. Referrals are by far and away our number one source of new clients, and our current clients are our best sales force. I've had a couple of agents not work out, and I think one of the reasons they didn't work out with us was they were so focused on trying to recruit new members, new clients, they didn't really pay attention to the guys who they had. And for me, like I said, I want to work with people who I believe in. And generally, once you get to do that and you believe in that person, you develop a relationship with them, they're going to refer people to you that they know would kind of fit your personality. So the amount of people who we get, coming to us these days, it might be smaller, but they're really quality candidates who generally get along with us. We also get a lot of referrals from media people. There's an industry that reports on who's getting what job, and those guys are in the know, and a lot of times they refer coaches to us. We do personal recruit. And the way we do that is we identify a coach we think is doing a great job. We try to get connected with that coach. And a phrase that I like to use is be patiently persistent. I had a coach one time who was he was out and he was doing some work for this website, doing some scouting. And the guy who ran this company wasn't always the fastest to respond. And one day I hear from this coach like, Dennis, I've called this guy 13 times and he hasn't returned my call. And I'm like, yeah, because you called him 13 times without a response. Like, that is not gonna work. You know, you have to realize that you are not the only priority in people's lives. But you don't want to become an afterthought either. So being that patiently persistent, I think, is really important. We have a website where we do get some inquiries from there. And then we don't do them now, but one of the ways we got started, we did some advertising. We did some targeted online ads at some of the job search websites that coaches go to regularly, and we did some direct mail. So that's how we were able to get our personal ones. We got one more. And then we're a business. So how do we make money? So our income, the vast majority of it comes from client commissions. And here's our basic structure. We ask our clients to sign 2-year representation agreements. It's $150 per month at your current job. And when you change jobs, it's 3% for an assistant and 4% for head coaching jobs. And we get paid on the entirety of the contract term that we negotiate. So if we do a 5-year deal for a head coach, we're gonna get paid on a 5-year deal. So what that allows us to do, different than players, now NFL players are starting to get guaranteed money. It's only happened in the last few years, unfortunately, with Deshaun Watson, who's not necessarily the poster child of NFL players, but he was the first one to really get a significant amount of guaranteed money, and that's becoming more normal. Definitely in 2006, there was no guaranteed money for NFL players. So one of the nice things about working with coaches is if you do have a number of head coaches or coaches on multi-year contracts, you can plan out and know that, hey, this revenue is at least legally owed to you. Collecting it is not always guaranteed, but that money is legally guaranteed to you. And then what do we spend our money on? Number one thing, paying our agents. What I saw from the big agencies is that people jump from agency to agency to agency, and most of them are salary based. And this is kind of what I was offered before I left the Players Association. It was a salary with bonuses, but the vast majority of the bonus goes back to the company. That doesn't really get me excited. So I wanted to create a place where our agents, if they do well enough, essentially become their own businesses. Travel is a huge expense for us. We visit. I'm sorry. Travel is a big expense for us. It's one thing I remember at the Players Association. I had a coworker who felt that he deserved to get paid more money, even though he's making $500,000 or $600,000 a year. We would travel together, and he would order the most expensive bottle of wine, maybe 2, every dinner we went to. We'd go to the most expensive restaurants. He'd have to stay in a suite. When it comes to expenses, you can ramp those up if it doesn't affect your bottom line. And I don't think that necessarily makes sense. So our agents, for the most part, once they get going, they take care of their own expenses, but the upside is on them. So I want to make it so that when they do well, which a couple of them are really doing well, they decide they want to stay with Coaches Inc. and not leave for somewhere else. And then our final kind of big expenses events. I mentioned hosting these things. We do it at the conventions. We'll have parties, do events at the NFL Combine, and then the Final Fours are places where we also do events.
All right, I think we are in a really excellent position to start.
Well, I wanted to share this with you guys. About me. If you can see, this is me as a baby. My father passed away this year, and we were going through a bunch of old stuff and found this picture. Me on a phone when holding a football. You might think that this was my plan from being 2 or 3 years old, however old I was. I promise you, when I was sitting in these chairs at William & Mary, no idea I would ever be working with coaches. No idea that I would start my own agency. I'm here today in part because my freshman roommate spoke last semester, I believe, Nelson Worley, the founder of True Places, folding chair company. I was telling Graham earlier, if you had walked into our freshman dorm room and said, these 2 guys are going to start their own companies, you would have been laughed at. We were not good students. We were, having fun in college, and no idea that this is where our paths would take us. But I wanted to say that because you don't have to have it figured out at your age. And I definitely didn't. It was life experiences that helped shape me. I talk about, I was able to get the NFLCA internship. I went to career services at George Mason Law, and I said, hey, I'd like to interested in sports. Like, well, we can't help you. So I didn't let that stop me. I sent out almost 150 letters and resumes my spring break of my first year of law school. I got 2 responses. One was a guy who didn't really, it was all sports and law. One was a guy who was a lawyer, but didn't really work in sports law. He was the game day announcer at RFK Stadium for the Redskins games. Very nice man. He got back to me and said he couldn't help. And the next one was eventually my boss, who actually I did not send my resume to. I had sent it to Richard Bertelson, who at the time was the general counsel for the Players Association. The NFLCA had just gotten started that spring. And my boss said, hey, Richard, I need to get an intern. Do you have anybody in mind? He's like, well, I got this guy's resume. Richard was the president of the Sports Lawyers Association that year. And I put on my resume, I would be attending the Sports Lawyers Association conference in May. And I promise you, that's why Richard passed along my resume. It wasn't because I didn't do great at William and Mary. I was doing pretty well in law school at George Mason, but it had nothing to do with my academic background. It had to do with me saying I was going to attend a conference where this guy was the president. So I had no idea. And honestly, it took that change to the NFLPA to force me to get to a point in my life where I knew I can't do this anymore. And what do I have to lose by starting Coaches Inc? So if you feel like you don't have it figured out, that's perfectly okay. I definitely did not have it figured out. And this is me now. It's my wife, Sarah. She's an author. She just published our first book this year, Grown Women. My daughter, Margot, and our son, Max, who they are here. Miraculously, we got down in record time today and they're checked into the hotel. We're staying for the football game tomorrow night.
So I think we're in a really excellent position to start our Q&A now. So if you're here in the hub, feel free to raise your hand or just speak up and we'll pass you the mic.
Actually, I'm going to kick things off here in the back. Dennis, thank you so much for sharing time with us today. You talked about person over position, and that has translated well for like coaches that you're looking and seeking. How does that translate to people that you pick part of your own team?
The exact same way. I mentioned there, and there's one agent in particular who just did not work out with us. He solely focused on money. And one of the things that happened, and coaching is a strange profession. You can be a head coach making $1.5 million. And then 3 years later, you're making $50,000 as an analyst somewhere. That's just the reality of this business. So you don't know where people are going to be 3 or 4 years from now. What this agent would do, and he had been a player agent, had represented some extremely high profile players over the years, represented a couple of my friends who ended up playing in the NFL, one who I got to know at the NFLPA, one who I grew up with. And I was really, really excited to have him come work with us. But I realized after a couple of years, like he wasn't treating the guys who were at the time lower level very well. We never hear from this guy. And he only wants to talk to me to ask me if I could recommend him to somebody else. That was bad. And it got to the point where before we split, I didn't really feel comfortable recommending anybody to him. And we ended up taking over most of the work of his clients. And looking back at that, had I done a little bit more research into what really motivated him, it would have been different. And the agents who work with me now, they truly have a passion. You have to love what you do in this business. And it's, I've been in games every week since college football season started. Like sometimes I still can't believe I get to be on the sideline of a game and get paid for it. Like it's awesome, but you have to really, really love that because that means traveling away from my family. I miss out on some things that on the weekends, that's when most people have relaxed. On the weekends, that's where I'm gone. So you have to love it. You have to care about people. And I think the agents who we have share that vision. But when you do start out, you're not only selling yourself to clients or prospective customers, you have to sell yourself and your vision to people who work for you. And I was able to hire guys that straight out of law school that had no business working for me for the salaries they started out at, but they saw they had an opportunity and they took advantage of it. And that's been a really big, important part for us.
Appreciate that insight. Anybody else?
I can probably speak loud enough.
Let's resume.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
I am a career advisor for our graduate business students, and more students are very interested in breaking into the sports industry. And so I don't want to be that career advisor that was at Mason, that has no advice or help for them. So any advice for us as career advisors or even students, tactics they could use to help break themselves in, especially a lot of them don't have a ton of connections in the sports industries as well.
Well, I had none either. Both my parents were public school teachers. And honestly, they believed in education. That was their big thing. And for me, they didn't quite understand the way networking impacts life. And that's something I had to learn on my own. I think for me, you have to get some luck. That's reality. When I talk to students, I mentioned when I sent out those cover letters and resumes just blindly. I went on Martindale Hubble, which is a legal database that lists what practices people work in. You know, if I sent out 10 letters, maybe I would have hit, the people that I needed to hit. But I feel like I increased my chances to get lucky by doing around 150. And then once I got that opportunity, there was no job too small for me. I was in places I did not deserve to be. I was meeting with the head of NFL properties, the general counsel of the NFL at age 24, 25 as a law student. But I knew our issues as well as anybody in that room. The coaches were a pain in the butts. They didn't really care about us, but I knew the issues as well. I didn't have the experience. I would do that and then come back, and the next day I'd have to fax out 32 newsletters. This was faxing time back in the day. I'd have to fax out 32 letters. And I would do things that weren't asked of me. I mentioned this database I designed. That wasn't asked of me. My boss was a football coach. He didn't know that was a possibility. When we started tracking our dues, he had an Outlook. He would have an Outlook contact for the Dallas Cowboys. And in the notes section, he would say, Coach A is paid $2,000. Coach B is paid $4,000. No way to tally how much has come in or anything. This database tracked how much the dues paid. So I did all these things that were just, I saw a need for and did them. I don't think that there is a way that you can actually do it. I think experience helps. While you're in college, one thing that I didn't take advantage of is actually working for the athletics department, volunteering to help out at events. Christian Carter got his MBA here and graduated in 18. He's been with us. I mentioned that chance encounter with the Meridians at Paul's. So I actually negotiated the Meridian's contract with Louisville, the only outside of sports contract I've negotiated. But I did that while he was away. While they were away, they kept their house. Christian was a student here and actually rented their house. So when Christian reached out to me, we had that connection of Paul and the Meridian. That gave some credibility to Christian in my mind because it was somebody I knew. And while he was here, he worked doing events and that sort of stuff for the athletics department. So I do think your local, whatever school you're in, obviously we're here at William & Mary, that's a great way to start. There's other schools not too far away, Old Dominion being one. But trying to get involved while you're in school to get some experience. And it's not really the experience that matters as much as the people you get to meet. Because those are the people that, like I said, Christian, had he not said, he lived in the Meridian's house, I don't know that I would have, been as interested in talking with him, and he's turned out to be a fantastic agent for us. Nobody really hires, like there's not a job posted. I've never posted a job. It's all been people coming to me. And I do believe that's how most people get their start in this industry. I do think one thing you'll find in order to have long-term success in this business and sports, I don't think you can be a jerk for too long. So I do think most people who, are in this industry tend to have some people skills, the ones that last. There are some that don't. So I think you will find that most people who do what I do, you have to have people skills. You have to be willing to get back to people. You have to enjoy people. I got joked. We had before Facebook was a thing and Instagram, whatever, there were actually physical books when we came in as freshmen that had everybody's incoming freshman's picture and some interest. And we got a form over the summer to fill that out. I put people, and I get joked by putting that I was a people person, by my friends to this day. But you really have to, be good with people. And I think so reaching out, they'll find that we're human, and then you have to have that human quality to have some success in this business that, people will get that. Might not have a job for them, but might be able to recommend.
Thank you, Dennis, for.
If I could say just one last thing about how much We've Been Married has impacted me. When I was in law school, I actually came down because Mark McCormick of the McCormick Tennis Center, he spoke here. Now, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he essentially created the sports agent business. He was a golfer here and played against Arnold Palmer when Arnold Palmer was at Wake Forest. And he convinced Arnold Palmer to let him, negotiate deals for product endorsements. And he founded the company IMG. So I saw him as a law student, and that just gave me confidence. Like, you know what? Like, this guy he created the sport of figure skating. He turned Wimbledon into what it is today. I mean, truly a visionary. And he sat in these same seats. So that definitely gave me some confidence. And I hope that you guys get a little confidence today.
So if everyone could just stay for a couple more minutes for a few announcements, that would be great. Just a few final things before we wrap up. If you didn't get a chance to do so in the beginning, please scan the QR code to check in to earn points for being here today. And you can also use this QR code that will be shown to give us some feedback. Yeah. And lastly, just a heads up about some upcoming events here at the Hub. We have our topic talk on Wednesday the 2nd, our rocket pitch, which is upcoming on next Friday. So if you would like to sign up, please scan that QR code. It is a chance to win money at the end of the semester. So sign up. And then we have fall break.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.